Yay! Okay, this is Tasia Luna, and I am with the gangster coach, Coach G. Coach G,
Woo-hoo.
introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. Tasia, thank you for having me on with you. This is so awesome, especially because I get to be the first. I love it. I love it.
Me too. I'm so excited. So I love Coach G. Her work has been phenomenal, like life-changing for me. There's been lots of things that have really helped change my life. And hers, I think, is some of the most transformative, some of the most hard-hitting, sometimes the most uncomfortable. You made me more uncomfortable than anyone else. No, I'm just kidding. But the amount of power that got unleashed working with you was just next level, like just next level. So we were chatting before, and we were talking about kumbaya that happens a lot in healing communities. Like people get injured, and so like mentally, spiritually, physically, and so they go looking for healing. And so like when your psyche is hurt and you're healing, there's so many different modalities. And they're all very lovely. And there's a part where you can heal, and you got to go back and really get into the nitty gritty of the original wound that set you on your healing journey in the first place. So you were talking about how you wanted the invisible pain and how you want to re-educate the world. And I am going to stop talking because this is your zone of genius.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Honestly, when we're talking about emotions, people really skip over it. And the only emotion that people really love to hold a lot of space for is joy, peace, and love. Now, coming from the grief space, which is kind of how I got started in coaching, where I wanted to actually work with empowering women, but I didn't necessarily like the Google spread of empowerment because it felt like in order to be empowered, you have to be against. And
Wait, will
I
you
was
pause a
like,
little bit? Not to interrupt because I love your idea, but I am interrupting because I really want you to expand on that. What do you mean as far as being against with empowerment?
that was just about to say,
Oh,
it's like you have to make a choice. If you're an empowered woman, then boo to men. And I
mhm.
don't like that ideology because I feel as a very strong emotional person and woman and very grounded that I can hold space for absolutely anybody because you're
Mm.
who you are. It doesn't change me. Just because I'm strong, just because I'm empowered, doesn't mean that I have to be against you. I have to be against your beliefs. I can maintain loving Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior until the day I die, and you can be a priestess.
I
It
love
doesn't
that.
mean that you as an individual hold a different space, or I have to take my power and dim it down in order for other people to peacock with their feathers. I don't subscribe to that. And so when I think about that concept of empowerment, it has to be
Mm.
grounded in something. And if it is not grounded in your emotions, then you're going to be a ship in a very tumultuous storm on the ocean. And so
Wow.
that didn't tick all the boxes for me. I was like, no, I'm looking for something else. And then my son passed away, and my cousins passed away, and three people in 22 months. And, like a year before COVID, few months before COVID, during COVID, you're just like, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I'm an
Mm.
active griever. I'm going to help people. Great, right? Except I got into this space where grief was so much deeper than just because somebody passed away. I
Wow.
was looking at how I dealt with my grief versus how other people were dealing with their grief. And I don't like that platitude of we all grieve differently, right?
There's the G.
Because we don't.
Yeah.
We literally are grieving from the depths of our souls. Just because you process it or you hide it, is that's not the difference. You're dealing with it or you're not dealing with it. I like think in such black and white terms, A plus B equals C. I think it's like my signature life song. And so I started to notice that grief was highlighting the garbage that was suppressed underneath. And that
Mhm.
is the part of the grief, that unresolved stuff, the hidden pains that I fell in love with in coaching.
That's so beautiful.
So,
So I wanna
yeah,
go back to, like, when you were getting your dukes up. I don't know how to fight, you can tell by how I hold my fists. Um, I don't know, something about that really, like, hit, and I'm like, "I wanna go back to that." Um, I think what it is when you were talking about holding space. So the empowerment, when you were talking about that and being against, it's like there's this competitive where it's set up like a zero sum. Like the way you were describing it, the way it was like zero sum, you can only win if other people are losing. So that's not true for you. And I can completely get what you're saying with that. But I wanted to go back because you have such a fierceness and it's your fierce fighting spirit, like, in Notre Dame, in Indiana, like, the college, and they have the Fighting Irish, like, you remind me of, like, fighting Coach G, because like, you have that fight in you that, like, but you're fighting in my corner, and you're like, it's a supporting kind of thing,
mhm,
um, and I think a lot of people that have deep grief, especially when it's unresolved and it's that invisible pain, like you were saying, that highlights the garbage, so it's like something's not working, but you don't know what, and you've shut stuff down, but you don't feel it, and because you're not feeling it, you don't think it's feelings, like it doesn't it it's numbed, and so you're like, I don't know what the problem is. I need a new mindset, or I need, whatever, I need a new mantra, or maybe I need to go to yoga 4 times more a week, whatever. But really it's the feelings that you stuff down, but because they're stuffed down, they're numb. And a lot of times people do that because they don't have the support that they need to process the grief at the time when it's happening, or they
yeah,
don't know how, but those two things can be really linked. So, going back to your one of your zone of genius, where you're, like, really helping people understand, um can you talk about that, like, the fear space you hold for people?
absolutely. That stems from being taught from when you're little how to manage the ball of emotion that you feel. If you look at children sometimes, they're so frustrated that they're shaking. Sometimes
Mhm.
their little faces are red or they hold their breath because
Mm.
they don't yet have the language of expression. And so they require their parent to come in and to soothe them and to tell them that's okay and to help them walk through their little tears and to help them breathe again, whether it's breathing with them. And you're like, okay, tell me what happened. Okay, slow down. And they're just like, "Ah!" And it's like, okay, no problem. And when you're doing that, you're bringing in such a calm to this little person after time and over time, they learn how to handle all of those emotions.
Mm.
It's like, "I'm so frustrated, I could just kick something." Well, we learned that that's not the right way to do that, but perhaps I have to teach Johnny that if you feel so frustrated and mom's not there, then you know what? I have some hammer and some nails in the back. I want you to go hit the piece of wood until you calm down, and then when mom comes on the scene, then we can chat and then you can talk and then you can get some kind of reflection. It's that level of holding space for my clients because
Mhm.
I take you right back to the beginning. If you don't have an emotional base, it's because you didn't have the support. That's not your fault. That is the responsibility of your tribe, of your parents, of your grandparents, whoever raised you. They were supposed to teach you that navigation skill. Most people are not taught it. And honestly, that was what I stumbled in. It was
Mm.
like, my gosh, the reason I'm so different from them is because I have a foundation of emotional wealth. And right from being, 4 years old, I always go back to this story. It's the strangest thing, but we were doing gift exchange when I was 4 in kindergarten, and my mom got this really big, huge, everything's big when you're small, this big,
Mm.
huge tea set as my Kris Kringle gift to the person for
Aw.
gift exchange, and I was like, so it was the coolest thing ever, and then I got a book. It's not a problem, I enjoy books, but when I opened the book had been written in pen and colored on, and
Mhm.
I was so distraught
Aw.
about this.
Aw.
Imagine, my mom
Mhm.
gets down with me and she says, "Honey, I know that you're not happy about this." And she
Mhm.
said to me, looking at the dad and his, how he was dressed and looking at him like maybe he's a single parent with his daughter, he said, "Maybe that's all they had to give." And I was like, "Okay." And off I went in my world, right?
Aw.
So, it wasn't that my mom got in there and she's like, "I can't believe they did that. How dare they?" Because then they would have fueled that feeling
Mhm.
of like, "How dare they?" Instead, my mom came in, even though she was very angry, which she didn't tell me until I'm this old. She was so angry. But what she
Aw.
didn't wanna do was put that on me. She wanted to give me a different perspective, and she wanted
Mhm.
to shield me from the anger that she was feeling herself.
And yet validating you. That's so cute.
Exactly. Because she coulda said, "Oh, don't worry about it, I'll get you something else." But that wasn't it. She wanted me to like, it was almost like right there, she taught me compassion.
Mm.
Without even recognizing it, because now we have language for it. So it was like she taught me compassion on people's situations. She didn't say, "Oh, that, like, you should be happy you at least got a gift." Like, she did not do any of that cruelty. She was just like, "Honey, I know you're upset. Thank you. Feelings validated." And then maybe that's the best that they could do. Okay. And off I go with my 4-year-old brain and I'm happy again.
That's so cute.
So
Did you
that's why that fierceness comes up
Mm.
when I hear the stories that have so negatively impacted my people. I get so angry, I get so upset about it. I'm like, "No, we're not doing it like that," because I feel that you should have had that.
The thing I love about that too, it's like you can feel the fierceness, like you're standing there fiercely, but like your mom, you're not putting that on the other person. So when we work together and there may have been things that angered you, you didn't offer me your anger to add to the fire of my own to internalize that. And it's like sometimes we think that supporting people is validating their feelings by like supporting those feel like by participating in the upset. And so it was such a different experience having you hold that fierce space without adding fuel to the fire.
Because that's what holding space is. These are
Mm,
your emotions. You have come to me because we have got to hammer out some very raw emotions. And I'm teaching a grown person how to support their own emotional needs.
yeah.
So, how can I be like, "Oh, I can't believe your mother did that to you," because that I didn't hold space for you. All of a sudden, this becomes the Coach G show. No, it doesn't matter what I think and it doesn't matter how I feel. It matters how you feel. You being validated, seen, witnessed, heard, that's what a client is supposed to receive.
Mm,
And all of the tsunami of emotions or whatever are supposed to be held back by me as we pick one and we work on the one and we tease out the one. And then there's going to probably 17 emotions, but then we'll do the next one after you get this one. Because that's like Put on your jacket, put on your shoes, get your backpack on. What's wrong with you? Aren't you smart enough? Like, no, that's not what you paid for,
Mm. I
right?
think I love that so much as coaching, and I think that that's a strong life skill in any situation, like when you have friends, when you're fighting with a significant other, obviously with children, because as you were saying with your mom, that's like where you learned that skill to begin with, was having that and having that as a firm like emotional base. And I did want to go back to the idea of the base. So this is my first video, which is super exciting. One of the things I really want to do is help people who feel like their life is just something's happened, whether it's trauma or the midlife crisis, like whatever is coming up, or the world feels like it's falling apart. And there's like this sense where it's like, I need, like, there's no going back. Like where I was in my 20s is not something I can ever go back to. And it's hard because, like, grieving those things I never grieved, but also, like, I miss it, you know, and it's like the house that I spent my teenage years in, my parents sold it and it was ripped down, and I still sometimes dream about that house, and it's a loss I'll never be able, like, I can't go back to the building because it's gone, it's gone. And, like, what do I do with the sadness that I feel over a place I can no longer visit? And even more than that, like, things have changed in my life where I'm not the same because of things that have happened. And having that solid emotional base, like, that is the pivot. That's the transformation that you really helped bring in. And so when I'm feeling something uncomfortable, I can sit with myself. I can go to other people, and that can be really powerful because being witnessed in those situations. But it's changed. Like, I've noticed that when I go to other people for support, it it's a secondary, it's not primary. I'm still supporting myself first. Yeah, right? And for me, that I think has been crucial for jotting the destination, or like finding the destination for where my life is going when it came to the halt that it came to. And so I kind of wanted to circle back to that as well.
When we're
I don't
talking about, like, having that emotional base part that's in there, life is going to happen. We're going to
Mhm.
lose things, people are gonna pass away, and with one of my clients, she lost her husband. They
Mm.
were, like, college only person and
Wow.
gone. So, everybody always wants to throw around the memory part. "Oh, you got memories, you have memories, you have things." And that is very true, but when you don't have an emotional base that's very strong, that feels like a platitude. So,
Mhm.
now that you are far more grounded in yourself, you know that you can't go back to your childhood home that you loved and there's pieces of it that you adore. This is where you actually get to rely on the memories, the good times, and maybe there's some
Mhm.
bad times there too, but you get to lean into those things. They become a part of you. This is where it's loving forward, not moving forward, not moving on. But you're actually able to take all of those treasures and you embed them into your heart and in your soul. And
Mm.
yeah, I mean, there are times when I look at my screensaver because I have a picture of my son and he has this little look on his face when he came home
Mhm.
from camp that day. And I do cry and I do miss him. But I also have the memory surrounding that picture embedded in my soul. So even though he's not here, even though your home is not here, we still get to have them because we have the memories.
Mhm. Uh, I feel like I'm gonna, like, cry, like, and it's just I love it because it's like, I feel like my grief is so much more pure. Like, I know that sounds so funny, but, like, 'cause it's like, I'm feeling pure grief, but it's not clouded by a bunch of past unresolved issues. Like, it just it feels like it's flowing, and I love that I feel like I can experience compassion and empathy without getting it muddy. Like you were saying, with even my own feelings, like, I know I kind of went into my own feelings right there. And every time I hear you talk about your son, I just the tremendous loss because how much I know you can love. And you never like I've heard you mention it in passing, I think 4 or 5 times now, and there's still so much about it that I don't know. And I don't feel like this is the place to ask about that, but I just know how much you must have treasured him so much because you keep him so close to your heart. And
Yeah. It it's really I don't talk about I don't talk about it because sometimes it can evoke so much emotions in other people that I then have to support,
oh god, that makes sense. Oh, that makes so much sense.
right? But when because it's so close and when I am, working with somebody or talking to somebody, yes, I had an amazing childhood and I know sometimes the person across from me has not. And so they might look at me and say, "Well, you haven't gone through this. So how can you help me and support me?" And it's like, I can help you and support you because I've already been taught how to build a proper foundation. It's been built in me. I can teach that
Mhm.
out. But there are moments where those stories need to be shared so that the other person can understand that they're fully seen. I can say from one client to another client, but when it comes from me and it's something that is so personal, then they're like, "Okay, she's not playing around here." So I never really get into it to pull the light off of the individual, but I will talk about it to support the person and where they're at.
How do you meet your emotional needs? And obviously you have a good solid base. And I'm just curious too because sometimes when you're caring for people it's such a deep level at the level of support you do.
Mhm.
I mean, caretaking fatigue is a real thing. Like, I want to just acknowledge how amazing you are, and I also want space for your humanity that, like, you're a superwoman and you're also human. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So, like, what does
thank you.
your like, how do you support yourself for your own emotional needs?
Oh, I live in a very violent world where I will cut everything else out of it if
Mhm.
it disturbs my peace. That is 1,000,000,000% where my capacity to hold all of the space for people comes from. My life is not chaotic. So, how I meet my emotional needs sometimes are like after work, I need to sit down and watch Netflix. That's a real thing. That is a real
Mhm.
thing, right? I don't have a chaotic life where my emotions are being ripped here and here. I don't live with drama.
Mhm.
So because my life is so peaceful, I have that capacity to build a very big space for my clients. And when I'm in it with them, I feel like we're winning.
Mhm.
I really do, because I have watched this person come and, like, unload their life on me because they're so upset and they're so frustrated,
Mhm.
and I'm like, "Okay." It's almost like they're puking, and what do you do with somebody who's puking? You hold their hair back, you pat them on the back because it's helping to calm their nervous system, right? And then after, you give them a towel and some water. Rinse out your mouth, spit it out. "Are you good?" Right? So
Mhm.
when you're coming with that kind of um, thought process, or you're coming with that kind of heart, it's very, very easy. My clients don't muddy my life at all. Like,
Mhm.
even with all their stuff, that's their stuff. They came to me so I can help them navigate it. But I take it a step further because I teach you how to navigate it so that when I'm no longer there, you can do it.
I love that so much. And with this video being on YouTube, I love that it like not everyone that sees it will be able to work with you, obviously, sadly. But I love that you're giving distinctions for people to understand it. Because sometimes when you're in the middle, sometimes when we're trying to recover from something, like loss triggers grief for whatever it is. Disappointment is a form of grief, right? Like you had an opportunity, didn't turn out the way you wanted, or having an expectation that's not met can be very devastating to how you see the world, to your worldview. And it is a loss. It's not the same as a loss of a person, but depending on your worldview itself, like it can feel like it. And so the grief is a very real thing. And shoving the grief down doesn't make it better. And so it's like I love all of this because it's like you're talking about the space, but it's acknowledging the truth that a lot of the times when we've gone through a journey in life, because life is going to life, like you said, life will happen. Um, we can't go backwards, we can't go back in time, and we're moving forward, and it's so easy to feel like we're getting stuck. And it's like when you have that feeling of constantly being stuck, like you're in suspended animation, or your life just everyone around you feels like they're moving forward, and you just feel like you're just you just feel stuck, like you're just stuck in time. It's like it's been 2010 for the last 15 years, but I feel like a year hasn't moved by. What do you mean Justin Bieber's in his 30s? Like there's this feeling, and I mean, I'm not speaking from personal. Oh, wait, yes, I am. But um, that's when there's kind of that invisible grief that you were talking about. And I love all of this, and I feel like it helps understand the landscape inside when you're struggling in that place. Like when you feel like no matter what you do, how many positive affirmations you do, or like whatever, how many things you invested, it's really hard to build that inner momentum. Usually it's because there's a lot of underlying grief that is not acknowledged, so it may like you may not even know it's there.
Exactly. And my take on grief is that grief is not just about the loss of a loved one, but it is about the loss of anything important to you.
Mhm.
In the grief world, there's the argument of, well, I lost my 19-year-old son. Your son was 25. At least he has a child. I didn't even have that. I'm never going to be a grandparent. It was my only child. I'm like, okay, I understand that. But what you're doing is you're saying that my grief is less important than yours because I have more experience. And that kind of thing makes me angry, makes me want to fight people, rip people's faces off. So when it comes to, again, my work with my clients, the person that is feeling stuck where 15 years has gone by on that individual and they're in that loop of Groundhog Day, that is just as bad as the loss of my son for them and
Mm,
for me. So there isn't this hierarchy of like, well, I lost my son. You lost 15 years of your life. Come on. Of course you get to grieve that. Oh, wait, I do? Permission granted.
mm,
Like sometimes that just needs to be said for a person to be like, oh, really? Because guess what they're told by their tribe of people around them? It's not that
agreed.
big of an issue. Just get over
Yeah.
it. You can do it. Like you were so great before. What's going on with you? And it's like, whoa, enough already.
Mhm.
The person hasn't learned, like, they've never been taught that skill. You cannot expect a person who has never worn laces to tie them up when you've only given them those lazy boy Velcros. And then you want to get angry because the child's 7 years old and doesn't know how to tie a shoelace. But you never taught them. So shame on you.
Mhm. It's really hard to use skills you've never learned or even know exist. Like, it's kinda crazy how that works.
Exactly. And
One
is
of
that
the
fair to the person?
Mm-mm, it's really not.
Yeah.
It's really not. One of the things that you taught that was so pivotal is closing the loop. And you mentioned the loop like Groundhog's Day, which goes really well with the 15-year idea of being stuck in time. Um, can you talk about closing loops?
Oh, yes. My favorite thing to say in the world.
Oh.
We're just gonna close the loop on that. You know, this is the part where people would say, "But this is mindset." I'm like, "No, it's not. It is just the neural pathways that literally we have fired together so often, so they're wired together."
Mhm,
And that closing the loop is where we go in with that reconciliation of what is that memory that keeps coming up? You're sleeping, that thing keeps coming up. You're washing the dishes, that keeps coming up. Your brain is saying, "Hi, pay attention to me. Let's deal with this." And your body's like, "No." Your emotions are like, "Hell no." Right?
yeah,
So when we pull up those memories and we reconcile whatever it is, sometimes it was, I just wanted to snuggle with my mom. It's so
mhm,
simple, but we don't take the time because we always are, like you said, we're always trying to move forward, but we have so many things behind us sometimes that trip us up
mhm,
because they're not handled.
yeah, it's true.
And so we handle it, we close the loop, and then guess what? It goes away or it comes back less angry on your emotions.
I also think when you have a lot of grief from one, you repeat the pattern, right? That's the whole cycle. So it's like something happens when you're a kid, you make it mean something, you think that that's who you are, you integrate it into your identity, and then you repeat that. So, like, that's where the whole idea of daddy and mommy issues come from, or like being drawn to the same type of person over and over again, whether they're toxic or, like those types of patterns. So, it's like when you're closing those loops, when we did work together, there were some loops that were loops from loops that were like it was like a chain of loops that all had the same baby loop,
Yep.
and it was really powerful going in and reconciling the original one and then watching the other ones unravel, and they all had their own process. Like, it wasn't like closing the one closed them all because it didn't, but there was definitely a segue from one to the next to the next to the next. A
Yes.
series
And
of
you
loops.
it's okay. And usually it's what I call the frozen perspective, right? It's like at 10, you're told something that literally sits in your chest and becomes a part of that identity that you carry. And then when we go back and you realize that, oh no, that happened because this happened, then yes, that perspective is the frozen perspective you had on life, period. And once we get that one, that loop closed, then you're able to see the other open loops because your perspective has changed. We unfreeze you pretty much.
So nice being unfrozen. I'm no longer stuck in suspended animation. Yeah,
Exactly.
I love that. I love all of that. So I love all of the topics that we covered. I know that we talked about some of these beforehand. Is there anything that you would like to add?
I will say that it is so important to be emotionally sound. It is
Mhm,
so important as a human, as a person, as a woman and a man, if this is your audience, to have that foundation and that base. It's like how they say you could lose everything, but
mhm,
education can never be taken away from you. When you know how to meet your own needs, you are not looking for others to do that anymore. And that is such a
mhm.
powerful place to be because your relationships are rich. your relationship with yourself becomes so rich and amazing, and it just changes absolutely everything about who you are. I say that you're not broken, you just weren't taught. That's all. It's like a little stitch that just needed a loop closed on it, like,
Yeah,
cut
go
it
back to the
off.
loop.
That's it. Just needed to be tied with a bow, right? And
Yes.
instead, it's, like, all frizzy and fraying, and the healing just allows all of that to come together and to be tied beautifully. And so when you have that, nothing can shake you. You'll move, you'll cry. It doesn't mean that you're stoic, but
Yeah.
it just means you're in touch with yourself. You know how to look after yourself from the inside out, I think is the most important part. And that's the invisible stuff nobody sees.
But that's also where, like, your personal power is, because it's like people don't really see your personal power. They just experience with, like, how you present yourself, your body language. Pretty much presentation is a big chunk of that. I did wanna circle back, like, speaking of loops, but not the same kind of loops. Um, I was just like, is there anything that I'm feeling needs to be addressed? And I've loved everything you've said. Like, I'm so excited to go back and watch this again. Um, but I also wanted to talk about the connection between grief and anger
Ooh,
because
yeah.
okay, I can just drop off there. I don't have to elaborate
Go ahead.
because I
You
didn't
can.
really get to, well, I didn't really get to a question, but I don't have your expertise. So like my question can is kind of vague. So when you said, "Oh, yes," I'm like, "Oh, she's got a jumping off point." So go at it.
All right. Grief and anger. Beautiful. I love it. We were talking about this before, and it
Mhm.
is something that a lot of us are taught to suck it up. Suck up your anger, suck up your anger, suck up your anger. You can't get upset. Don't yell at me, blah, 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 blah. And again, it goes back to being little and itty bitty and
Mhm.
learning how to navigate your anger, learning that, you know what, being angry is okay. We just don't want to force that anger on anybody else, nor do we want to make decisions out of that place, nor do we want to hurt anybody due to our anger. And when you have the eruption volcanic style level Richter of anger, then that really means there is so much stuff that is underneath there that you've never addressed. And grief is in that. I mean, it absolutely saddens and breaks my heart to know how many people have stifled anger
Mm.
and they are grieving internally. They've never been allowed to express themselves, or they've never felt safe enough to express themselves. Because what will it cost me if I do? So their grief and anger are very intertwined and very locked together.
And I think depending on your social system or like so many things, but sometimes it's more appropriate. Like you're allowed to express anger. Like I feel like men are generally allowed more access to anger and not grief, whereas it's like women can have grief, but in specific ways. And so it's like sometimes we express our feelings or emotions in any way we can, but it doesn't actually resolve anything.
Correct. Correct. And again, it all comes back to teaching, right?
Hmm.
Like men are like the tears for grief for a man, the world says no.
Right.
Only others who have grieved as well will say, "Come here, let me support you through your grief. You wanna cry, it's okay. You wanna be angry, it's okay." And when I was very heavily in grief, we would put together, things for family so that the children could express their grief with like one simple word,
Mhm.
I'm having a blue day. All right, what everybody stops. What do you need? You know, dad's having a blue day. Everybody stops. What is it that you need? Because there's a big list that we've created that's on the refrigerator. So you go and you choose something that you need to do out of that. Boom, that's your time. Go do what you have to do, you know? And it could be little Tommy saying he needs to ride his bike at 10 o'clock at night, but nobody's yelling because he's in that mode and he knows that he's supported. So as he gets older, he understands that when I'm grieving, I know what to do with those emotions.
Mm,
Everything goes back to what you were taught growing up, regardless of what society, social standing, any of that stuff. It doesn't matter. It's what you were taught in those situations that created that foundation for where you're at right now.
yeah, it all goes back to the foundation. It really does, and the roots, and it's what you're taught. And I also want to add, but when you're not taught, it's what you learn retroactively. Like, I
Mhm.
can't go back and change my past, but I don't have to keep repeating the same loops my whole life either. Like, I can move forward in a way where I can put that behind me. And that's true because of the work I've done with you, where I have that solid emotional base. Like, it it couldn't happen without that. So that's really nice to have.
Yes, it's amazing.
It really is. Okay. I know I already asked you if you had anything you wanted to add, and then I circled back and was like, "Oh, we need to talk about anger." But to talk about your work and not include anger would be omission, definitely. So couldn't do that. Is there anything else that's come up that you want to put in?
Um, no, just I would love for people to recognize that every emotion has the right to be seen and to be heard. And if you don't know how to navigate it, please, please, please find somebody that can teach you how to do that because you think you're suppressing, you think you've healed, you think you've forgiven. Your body is telling a different story. You're not sleeping, you're not eating. This, always tired without doing anything extra. All of
Mm,
those things are your system screaming, suppress, suppress, suppressed. Let me be free. And yeah, just please pay attention to that. Pay attention to that.
yes. That's a really good closing note. Like, pay attention to what your body is saying when it's the opposite to the story you keep telling yourself. That's so good. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining on my very first video, and I'm so excited. I'm just thrilled, and I'm really happy that you get to be the foundation in a
Ah, I
sense.
love that.
Me too. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and end it, and I don't let's see. And